October 1990. The Lebanese civil war has come to an end, but just across the border, Syria remains firmly under the iron rule of Hafez al-Assad. After 15 years in power, Assad has turned Syria into a nation ruled by fear, where freedom of speech was a distant dream and the right to choose their leaders was an illusion. The most terrifying symbol of Assad's rule is just outside Damascus, a place of fear and suffering, Sednaya Prison.
A symbol of Assad's brutal regime where tens of thousands of Syrians disappear.
This is more than just a prison. It's a living nightmare. Behind its towering walls, countless lives are swallowed by shadow, never to emerge again. Torture, starvation, and executions are routine. It's a place where humanity is stripped away, and fear is used as a weapon to crush any resistance. How did Sednaya become central to Assad's rule? And how did one man's need for control create one of the most infamous prisons in history? This is the true story of Sednaya Prison, a place where silence screams louder than words. The heart of the regime's power beat in the presidential palace. Foreign diplomats came to negotiate, and state-run media crafted a narrative of progress and stability. To the outside world, Syria was a nation on the rise, an influential player in regional politics, part of crucial peace talks, and a stronghold against the growing threat of extremism. But behind the polished image of progress lay a far darker truth. At the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva, Syria signed agreements condemning torture and extrajudicial killings. The world applauded what appeared to be a commitment to human rights. The protocols, signed by 127 countries, banned torture and unlawful killings, a response to the horrors of brutal dictatorships in Latin America. But 3,500 kilometers away, in Damascus, these protocols were not seen as a moral commitment. For Hafez al-Assad, they were tools to manipulate global opinion and tighten his grip on power. Hafez al-Assad's rise to power was not born of privilege. Born into a poor Alawite family in Syria's rural mountains, the Alawites, a minority Shia Muslim group, were marginalized and excluded from political power, but Hafez had ambition and vision. At 21, Hafez joined the Syrian Military Academy in 1951, taking his first step into the world of power and influence. The 1950s and 60s were a time of political chaos in Syria. The old order was crumbling, and the military gained unparalleled influence. For Hafez, this instability was an opportunity. Hafez quickly rose through the ranks. By the end of the 1960s, he was not just a soldier, he was a powerful figure, ready to shape Syria's future. In 1970, Hafez al-Assad seized power in the corrective movement, a bloodless coup that solidified his role as Syria's leader. But holding power required more than political strategy, it demanded fear. In Hama, a city known for its strong opposition to Assad's regime, the Muslim Brotherhood launched an uprising. The Syrian military responded with overwhelming force, leaving thousands dead and much of the city in ruins. The Hama massacre was a turning point. Assad realized that fear was his most effective tool. Suppressing dissent wasn't enough. He needed to eliminate it entirely. Fear became systematic and absolute. Over the next decade, Assad's network of control grew. 17 intelligence agencies monitored citizens, and nearly 1 million Syrians passed through detention centers. Many never returned. On a mountainside near Damascus, construction begins on a secret project, one that will symbolize the regime's power and cruelty. Hafez al-Assad personally approved the design of Sednaya Prison. Its underground cells were designed to trap sound, ensuring that prisoners would remain isolated from the outside world and from each other. In 1987, Sednaya Prison was complete. Officially, it was a military detention center. In reality, it was far darker. The name spread quickly, whispered in fear across Syria. Sednaya wasn't just a prison, it was a weapon of control, built to break bodies and spirits. Engineering terror. The Syrian government begins quietly acquiring land in Sednaya, a peaceful town just 30 kilometers from Damascus. The location was chosen carefully. High in the mountains, it was hidden enough to escape attention, but close enough to serve as a constant reminder of Assad's power. Construction began 3 years later. Hafez al-Assad wanted every detail of Sednaya to be perfect. This was not just a prison, it was a laboratory of fear. The prison's design was intentional. Its Y-shaped layout amplified the sounds of torture, ensuring that every prisoner could hear the cries of others. The sound itself became a tool of punishment. Cells were designed to break both body and mind, each measured 2 meters by 2 meters, too small to lie down comfortably, too narrow to pace. The window was a cruel design, letting in just enough light to remind prisoners of the world they had lost. The security around Sednaya was impenetrable. Anti-tank mines, motion sensors, and patrolling guards ensured no one could escape. Inside, 250 elite military intelligence officers maintained brutal discipline. Even the smallest details were designed for maximum control. Doors amplified the sound of slamming, and the dim lighting disoriented prisoners, keeping them perpetually on edge. By 1987, Sednaya was finished. Officially, it was a military detention center. Unofficially, it was a place designed to crush the human spirit. Sednaya wasn't just a prison, it was a system of fear, a weapon of control crafted to leave no prisoner untouched by its cruelty. The machine begins. Sednaya Prison received its first prisoners in the spring of 1987. They were brought in at night, blindfolded and chained, their identities stripped away the moment they entered the gates. Among the first prisoners were soldiers accused of disloyalty, political activists, and members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Every prisoner was reduced to a number. Their names, histories, and identities were erased, replaced by silence and submission. The guards at Sednaya were carefully selected and trained in methods of control. Their goal was not just to punish, but to destroy, to strip prisoners of their humanity and leave them as empty shells.
أنا عمري 56 سنة ما في احترام ما في أي شيء منوب بزتونا زت مثل الكلاب.
Torture at Sednaya was both physical and psychological. Prisoners were beaten, starved, and humiliated. But the greatest torment was the silence, the isolation that made every scream feel as if it disappeared into nothingness.
Hey guys, just wanted a quick heads up that we do have a Patreon account. If you're interested in supporting the channel and creating high quality videos, there will be clips of behind the scenes, some 3D models and soundtrack and more. If you're interested, please check it out. First link in the description. If you can't contribute, no worries, like, subscribe, it would mean the world to us. Now, further ado, back to the video.
Inside Sednaya, the division of power and pain is deliberate. The prison is separated into two primary structures, the White Building and the Red Building, each with its unique torture. In the White Building of Sednaya, military prisoners face a cruel and unique form of torture. Many of these prisoners are former officers, once in command of soldiers, now forced to obey those they once led. The building still carries the cold, rigid design of military discipline, but inside, it becomes a prison of dark psychological torment, a place where the past power of these officers is shattered and their dignity stripped away, leaving them broken and humiliated. Guards follow a rule known as the Silence Protocol. Prisoners must not make a sound, not even when they're tortured. The punishment for breaking this rule is so brutal that many prisoners would rather bite their own flesh than scream. From the outside, the White Building looks orderly, like any other military facility. But inside, it's a calculated system of control. The silence becomes a psychological weapon. Prisoners are isolated in their suffering, forced to feel invisible, powerless, trapped in a world where their pain goes unheard and unseen. Beyond that lies the Red Building. While it's known for holding political prisoners, its true purpose is much more sinister. Every day at 3 a.m., the guards blast what they call the music. The music in Sednaya isn't music at all. It's a cruel form of psychological torture, often mixed with the sounds of prisoners being beaten and screaming in agony. The guards play this disturbing sound loudly, using it to break the prisoners' spirits. One of the most infamous tracks often played is a pro-Assad song, which, on repeat, it keeps prisoners awake, causing constant mental stress and driving them to the edge of insanity. Salam, one of the prisoners, recalls how the noise felt like it might make his head explode. He describes it.
It was terrifying, and the source of the sound was impossible to pinpoint. The whole building seemed to shake with it. The sound was like the walls themselves were tearing apart.
The meals given to the prisoners are deliberately small, just enough to keep them alive, but never enough to make them feel strong or healthy. Water is rationed, given in barely enough amounts to keep them alive, leaving them weak and dehydrated. While the pain inside the prison is unbearable, there's something far darker hidden beneath its walls. Sednaya Prison is not just a facility, it's a mechanism of control. Every element, from its architecture to its practices, is designed to inflict utmost torment. Deep within the cold, silent walls of Sednaya Prison, where fear and suffering define every moment, lies one of the most dreaded places, the salt rooms. Tucked away on the first floor of the Red Building, these small freezing chambers, just 6 by 8 meters, hold a terrifying secret. The regime has crafted a terrifying method to deal with the bodies of the dead. Instead of refrigeration, they use salt. The floors are thick with rock salt, covering the bodies to preserve them until they can be buried. In the lower levels of the Red Building, the cells are overcrowded. 30 men are crammed into spaces meant for just 5. Each prisoner has only 40 centimeters of space, just enough to sit with knees pulled up, but not enough to lie down. The lack of space makes sleep nearly impossible, turning exhaustion into a constant form of torture. Surveillance was constant. Guards observed and documented every detail of the prisoners' lives, from their weight loss to their mental breakdowns. This information was used to calibrate the level of torture, ensuring prisoners were pushed to the brink without dying. At least, not yet. Ensuring prisoners remain alive for questioning. The regime can also claim that no one dies. On paper, deaths are always blamed on natural causes or heart failure. The sound of names being called become a source of terror. Those left behind could only wonder if they would be next. Sednaya's methods were not confined to its walls. Guards from across Syria were sent here to learn its enhanced interrogation techniques, a euphemism for brutal torture. These techniques were exported to other prisons, spreading Sednaya's legacy of fear throughout the country. By 1990, Sednaya had become the model for all Syrian detention centers. Its name was spoken quietly, a symbol of relentless cruelty. In the late 1990s, Syria's political stability faced growing threats. Hafez al-Assad, who had ruled the country with an iron grip for over 30 years, was aging. His health was failing, and the regime's focus shifted to ensuring the Assad family's legacy. Bashar al-Assad, Hafez's son, had been living abroad, training to be an ophthalmologist. Compared to his older brother Bassel, Bashar was seen as inexperienced. But in 1994, Bassel's tragic death in a car crash thrust Bashar into the spotlight as the heir apparent. When Hafez al-Assad died in June 2000, Bashar took over as Syria's leader. The transition, however, was anything but smooth. Within the government and military, many doubted Bashar's ability to lead. Resistance to the idea of dynastic rule began to surface, but dissent was quickly and ruthlessly silenced. Sednaya Prison became a cornerstone of Bashar's consolidation of power. Political activists, military officers, and anyone suspected of disloyalty were thrown into cells. Within those walls, they faced relentless interrogation, brutal torture, and a system designed to strip them of their humanity. In 2008, Sednaya became infamous for what would be known as the July massacre. During a routine inspection, military police destroyed copies of the Quran in front of Muslim prisoners. When prisoners tried to protect their holy books, the guards opened fire, killing 9. Tensions escalated, and by the end of the day, 25 lives were taken. The massacre left Sednaya drenched in blood, a grim reminder of the regime's capacity of ruthless control. By 2010, Sednaya had perfected what the regime called the production line. Every prisoner who entered its gates went through a horrifying process: arrival, registration, dehumanization, interrogation, and eventual disposal. Protesters, activists, and even ordinary citizens, those who dared to dream of a freer Syria, would soon pass through Sednaya's gates. Most wouldn't survive the brutal torture long enough to share their stories. But among the many stories of suffering in Sednaya, one teenager's experience would quietly bring the regime's darkest secrets to light, exposing the truth to the world. Omar al-Shagri is just 15 years old when he is arrested for attending an anti-regime protest. His journey through Syria's brutal detention system soon takes him to Sednaya Prison. Upon arrival, guards force Omar to crawl on his hands and knees. If he moves too slowly, they kick and beat him with rubber hoses. Stripped of his clothes and identity, he is reduced to nothing but a number. A guard whispers coldly, "Welcome to hell, boy." Inside, Omar finds himself packed into a cell with 34 other prisoners, far more than the space was ever meant to hold. There's no room to lie down. He and the others are forced to sleep sitting up, their bodies leaning against each other for support. The air is thick with the stench of sweat, dirt, and waste, and the single hole for a toilet only makes the unbearable conditions worse. This is now his reality. Food becomes a weapon. Prisoners are fed only a bowl of watery soup a day. Some days, it has scraps of barley. Other days, it's just thin broth. Bread is a rare luxury, and when it arrives, it's either moldy or too hard to eat. Omar's weight drops to just 35 kilograms, or 77 pounds. His ribs protrude like sharp bones. He describes it.
"We looked like skeletons wrapped in skin."
The physical torture is relentless. Omar watches as prisoners are hung by their wrists, their shoulders dislocating from the unbearable strain. They are forced into the dreaded tire position, their bodies beaten for hours with sticks and hoses. The pain is beyond words. Nothing could prepare him for this level of brutality. But the true nightmare, Omar says, is the psychological torture. Guards force prisoners to choose who among them will be sent to their death. The horror of deciding who will die, knowing that it could just as easily be their own turn, grinds away at their sanity, pushing them closer to madness. At night, the guards call out names for transfer, a cold term for execution. Omar never sees the hangings, but he hears everything. The shuffle of footsteps, the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground, followed by an eerie, dreadful silence. After 3 years of unimaginable suffering, Omar is released in a prisoner swap. Family barely recognize him. Weighing just 35 kilograms, he looks like a ghost of the boy he once was. Today, he is a human rights advocate, sharing his story with the world, but his words always carry the same weight.
"I survived, but I left so many behind."
The release of Sednaya brings some hope, but for many families, it marks the beginning of a new nightmare. Thousands of people are still missing. Families rush to the prison gates, desperate for any information about their loved ones. Mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters hold up pictures, asking survivors if they've seen them. Some families find closure as their loved ones emerge from the gates, thin, weak, but alive. Others are met with silence. Many believe their loved ones were executed, their bodies buried in the mass graves discovered by the rebels. The fight for justice goes on. Efforts are being made to hold Assad and his officials responsible for war crimes. The scars of Sednaya remain fresh. The prison stands as a symbol of cruelty, but also as the world's obligation to remember and demand justice. Never again, they said after World War II. But Sednaya proved that history doesn't repeat, it evolves.